The, fir- the first rule of Incite Club is you don't talk about Incite Club. You do Incite Club. The second rule of Incite Club is the only assumptions we make about one another are that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering.
Oh, that's a great way to start. I clicked before. So, okay, this is the intro of the podcast.
The first rule of Incite Club is you don't talk about Incite Club. You do Incite Club. The second rule of Incite Club is the only assumptions we make about one another are that we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. The third rule of Incite Club is you check all your other assumptions at the door. We hope these conversations will bring you insights that incite you to action. Welcome to Incite Club.
Welcome to Incite Club.
Woohoo! Thank you for making that awesome intro.
I want to start by thanking Andrew and Patrick from our band 2 weeks for recording this with me. This is perfect for this podcast.
It had to be the theme song of Incite Club.
Yeah. So Megan, you were saying that you had something to share already, and I think we can start with why we created the podcast and then go into that. We've been talking together for quite a long time, and every time that we have a conversation, we have these amazing insights. And I'm talking insight, the ideas inside. But that idea of playing with words was yours, and bringing the curiosity is something that I'm gonna ask you to bring the words because you know what to say.
Well, when I hear curiosity, I actually think of you. I mean, that's an influence I got from being around you. But yeah, these conversations, and I remember a moment. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I remember a moment when we were on Zoom and we were talking, and like you know me deeply. You've taken me on healing journeys, and we've worked together each in our professional capacities, and we know each other really well, and we have all this respect for one another, and we've been through all of these experiences that have brought us closer together. And there was this moment, and you were going to talk about something, and I saw in your eyes the hesitancy, just like the is it okay to mention this, right? And it was an experience you wanted to share about that was like alive in your heart, that was real for you, that was like, oh, this is something interesting that's making me think, that's, I want to take this on intellectually, emotionally, whatever it was. I don't remember the topic, but it was that pause where you're like, oh, is this something it's okay to say? Because like sometimes people make a snap judgment about whatever this is, or they hear it and they make all these assumptions and they get scared, right? And anybody listening, I'm sure right now you can think of like 15 different topics that this is true for just this week, right? Where you go, oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to go there, right? And I for me, that was such a sparking moment, because it's like, if the two of us who have connected in so many ways, been through so much healing work separately, a lot of healing work I've had together with you as well. We have so much love for each other. And even we, in our interaction, we're having that moment of like, oh, is this okay? And I was like, wait a minute. This place where we are in the world is actually shrinking us and our context down instead of expanding us. And that felt like something we wanted to investigate. That's my memory.
I can totally remember so many times. And part of it is the judgment, but I feel like for me, especially when we were in context of like me being the coach in the calls, sometimes I felt like, is it okay for me to bring my beliefs into this?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to press any of my beliefs and the things that it's my experience, right? Each of us have the right to have our own experiences. So I was always concerned of bringing this with thing like, this is my experience, and this
Yeah.
is part of what we were bringing with this as well. Like, this is my experience, you have your experience, and we all have our context, and it's okay to share within that.
Yes. And finding that balance where you're not, forcing your context on somebody else, but you're also not shrinking your own context so much that the other person doesn't have a chance to be exposed to it.
Yeah.
And I'm always really I've been very conflict averse my entire life. I actually have there are 4 of these responses to danger and trauma, and it's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And I have a lot of the fawn response, which is like, I sense danger from somebody, so I'm just gonna like lay it on thick. You're wonderful. You're amazing. Right? I don't know if anybody else recognizes this. And I'm laughing about it because it's something I'm aware of. But it's a frightening when I like think about that woven into my journey as a soul going through the
Mhm.
world. It's a frightening thing because there are times where I have really given away my power and empowered people who were looking to manipulate or looking to have control because my fear was saying, just say anything. So, like, I'm not singled out by this person's anger or their, whatever the directed, kind of like unpleasant feeling was. So, I really have a high sensitivity. I'm looking out for when am I backing away so much that firstly, I'm being lost in the conversation.
Mm.
And secondly, maybe I'm kind of helping somebody who's already on an ego trip forward more.
Yeah.
So I always admire like being so averse. I always admire when I see somebody in conversation say something like, "Huh, okay, but I don't really understand why that's true." I'm like, "Oh, you're allowed to just honestly and compassionately and kindly challenge the context that somebody else is trying to flood over everyone." I'm like, "Whoa."
And that's where the curiosity comes in, because when you are challenging, but you are actually being curious about it. It's not
Yeah.
a challenge in a way like, what you're saying is wrong. Like, I don't believe that.
It's
Yeah.
simply not taking it for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
not taking it as the
yeah.
ultimate truth as well.
So walk us through like how curiosity feels for you or yeah. I want to hear more.
I feel like I'm super like honesty driven. Like, I want people to be the most honest, true, authentic they can be. And I actually feel, we are talking about the danger. I feel the danger when I feel like people are not saying to me what they really think,
Yeah.
because they might even be saying something that oh yeah, that's what I want to hear, but I don't hear truth in that, and I know that I probably can't trust that. uh so I prefer to someone to say like, you're horrible, and I know like that's the truth, thank you, that's what you're feeling, than like shutting down or saying like, oh no, everything is great, and it's not. So for me, I feel like the curiosity comes more from a place of like, I actually want to know what's beneath everything,
Mhm.
and I want to feel that I can really trust and have a deep, honest conversation with you, than just hear what I want to hear, even if it's not
Mm.
pleasant. For me, it's better to hear something that is not pleasant than to hear something that it's I can feel that it's not true.
Yeah. And for you, you're saying that feels like danger when you sense are you able or do you wanna unpack that more? Like, why is it dangerous if you sense people are not giving you the truth?
You know, these things probably come back to like childhood and stuff like that.
Sure.
I felt and I can't really go back to exactly where, but I remember some things like people talking on your back something, and then you think like, but in front of me they are one thing, and then they're saying this about me in my back,
Yeah.
and it feels like you can't trust.
Sure. How do I assemble, especially as a young child, how do I assemble reality if I can't like, if I can't rely on my sensory information? I've got a thermometer and it said, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and then I put my finger in and scalded it. Like, something's wrong here. That water was not room temperature water. So how do I assemble? I mean, this is probably why this is so intriguing a topic for us, but like, how do I assemble a picture of the world if I'm not at least given an opportunity to examine what's in it for myself? If somebody's withholding or giving me um, what they think I want to hear, or saying one thing to my face and another thing over here, how am I supposed to know what's going on? And therefore, like, how, what kind of g- person to be in the world? How do I figure out how life works if I can't get that just data?
Yeah. How do I have to be? And that's another thing that it goes back to the conversation that we were talking about, like uh, all that hesitancy of sharing our point of view
Yeah.
comes back to that feeling like wanting to belong and who I have to be part of this group.
Yeah. And that's I've had this moment that I was describing where I was like looking at your face and seeing like, oh, it was just this like micro, and then we talked about it, which I love so much, right? You're like, I'm not sure I should say this, but I'm gonna say this. And then we talk about it. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, how interesting. And but I've had this moment with other friends as well. And the sadness came up for me when I was on the phone with a friend, and she wanted to share something that was like this real heavy burden on her heart. But kind of in order to give me the background and the context, it became clear she was worried that I was going to put down a wall.
Mm.
So it's more than just, or I guess maybe this is like what it leads to when we foist our context on somebody else. But um
How it will change our relationship with the person, or how they perceive us and how they're
yes.
going to treat us. Yeah.
Yes. Will this bring down a wall? And maybe it's just like a momentary wall where things are, awkward and we work through it. Or maybe it's like this is, you know, a, a, a cement wall. And this is like, I'll never think of you the same way again because whatever. And it was such a beautiful moment to be able to say, like, oh my God, I completely understand where you're coming from and what you're saying. And I feel the same way. And this sigh of relief. Right. And I was like, oh, I haven't been able to talk to anybody about this because in order to just explain the personal situation, it touches on these like words, concepts, things that are kind of immediate door closers for a lot of, or that seem to be. I can't say that that's true in people's hearts, but
Yeah.
I'm being shown an image of that. Like an image is being projected of there. And again, I'm sure anybody listening can think of like 15 things, right? Like if I say this one word, if I think this one thought, like I people will close down to me. Um, so there was like this wonderful moment in it of, now we feel even closer because we passed through the trial of, is this going to like be scary? But that
Yeah.
really stuck with me. And I think language is meant to connect us because what a beautiful, magical technology. I feel this way internally and nobody can experience it but me. Nobody can experience inside of me but me. And then I have language and I can kind of try, I'm like, hey, ladies, I kind of feel like this. It's kind of like that. And you're like, oh, yeah, I could. And we can connect in such an intimate and deep way with language. And yet also create create these walls. So you know me. I'm a Gemini through and through. I'm fascinated by language and
I know.
but that piece of connection,
Yeah.
like how that's a question that's really big in my heart right now is how can I expand the connection I'm having with the people I'm already connected to and how can I expand my connection and connect with even more people?
Yeah. And you see, it's so interesting that it, it's the curiosity
Yeah.
and it's the truth. And you brought up that you're a Gemini, I'm a Virgo, you are Virgo moon as well. Like, we have a lot of Mercury energy here. So of course, like, you mentioned that you think of me when you think of curiosity, but
Curiosity.
I think of you as well. Like the play with
Mm.
words as well. Like, you think of me and I think of you. Like, there's some
Yeah.
parallels in here. Um, but the curiosity and the truth need to, like, the honesty need to walk hand in hand. And I always think of curiosity as the first word for Gemini, and the honesty as the first word for Virgo, and you have both.
Mm. Beautiful.
Because
You just yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, because if we are honest but we're not curious, then it turns to criticism. And if we are curious but we are not honest, then we are going to ask about what the other person thinks, but we might not share ours. Like, it becomes like a just a one-sided thing.
Yes. Ooh.
Like,
There's a
I'm
lot I
gathering
wanna
information, but I'm not sharing mine.
yeah. And maybe even not integrating it back in.
Yeah.
Like I'm gathering all these shells on the seashore and then okay, great. Just set them down when I'm done at the beach. Uh, there's so many things there that I wanna like threads I wanna pick up. But I wanna hop back because you brought up play and play and truth together in the same
Mm.
sentence. And I think that's not a pairing we're used to hearing. And if we could get that pairing more often, I think we would be all so much more in love with ourselves, with life, and with each other. Um, I was listening to Guru Jagat's All I Want Is the Truth this morning.
Yeah.
That's on the Incite Club playlist too. Um, and it's a fun song, you know, it's like I imagine she had a ball recording it, right? Because it's like this yelly, all I want is the truth, just give me some truth. And like, you know, I don't want to hear anymore from politicians and hypocrites and all this kind of thing. And but I was listening to it and going, huh, what do we even mean when we say truth? Lots of different things, right? Lots of
Yes.
different things. I is it a fair characterization to say that you and I are both on journeys, like, exploring our own truths? Does that feel
Mm.
does that feel
Yeah.
true to you?
Truth seekers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's for me, that means, like, I wanna learn myself.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I was drawn to you was I had that breakthrough astrology session with you, and I was like, "These are things that I've kind of, like, somehow intuitively known about myself, but no one has ever reflected back to me, and now I know them in this conscious way," and I went, "There I am. I see myself. I'm making so much more sense." You know, it was such a beautiful, um experience of being seen and being honored. I'm like, "Oh, these things do all fit together." It's not that I'm jagged pieces mashed together in a Frankenstein monster way, like, here's how they fit. Um,
There's no mistake.
yeah, not a mistake. So, for me, that's, like, this idea of self-truth, like, I wanna know who I am at this deeper level, at this core, but most of the time, we're hearing true as, the one big thing that's true and it can't be refuted and it can't be argued. And if you don't um, believe in it wholeheartedly, you're a crackpot. And wow, what if we could bring playfulness to that party? Right?
I see what you're saying. Like, it's basically truth without play is that dogmatic. thing.
Well, I think there are a lot of things to it. I think that dogmatism and that there is just this one truth arises when we don't acknowledge that everybody's living in a different context. And I thought this was just kind of fun. But okay, yesterday was solstice, but for me it was summer solstice. What was it for you?
Winter solstice.
Right? I'm like
I'm all wrapped up here, and you are like just
but
free.
right, like the fact that we live in different
Um,
hemispheres
yeah.
means that if we were like, there's just this one objective truth, like we could be like arguing all day long over whether it was winter solstice or summer solstice.
You're wrong for not being cold right now.
Yeah, and I just love it because it's a really beautiful concrete, or like,
Yeah,
being in your mastermind and there being people all over the world, and somebody in Australia, and you're like, it's not the same day for us. Right?
it's
Like
true.
basic facts that I take for granted. It's summer. It's Thursday. And she's like, it's winter and it's Friday for me.
Yeah.
My Australian sister. So the okay, the acknowledgement, it's more than play, right? Play, I think, helps us get there, but the acknowledgement that there are different contexts is a basic
Mm.
principle for doing any kind of investigation and figuring out what's actually going on, because otherwise we're only going to be stuck in our own context, and we're just going to be revolving around ourselves and going, it's summer, and it's like whatever experiences, beliefs, influences, all those things I've had, I project onto everybody else and go,
Yeah.
why don't you get it? Is that
Yeah,
making sense?
it does. And I was even thinking, like you mentioned, the days different and so on. I love the parable that you brought up, talking about this, about the three blind men and the elephant,
Yeah.
because it does boil down to the perspective, how we, and all each of us can only see like a piece of the puzzle and not the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's impossible for one person to see the whole truth.
And I think that's something that we accept up to a point, and people have different points of accept. So everybody's heard that parable about like three men approaching an elephant, and one's at the tail, and one's at the trunk, and one's at the side. And they're all like, this is a totally different animal. You're crazy, right? And we go, oh, okay. And we give lip service to the idea that everybody has their own opinion. And then when it comes down to certain things, and it's going to be different certain things for all of us. I when I was just out of college, I was cooking a lot, and I was going grocery shopping with a guy I was dating at the time, and he's like, "Oh, let's get some sweet potatoes." And I was like, "Those aren't sweet potatoes. Those are yams." It turns out they're sweet potatoes. But I had grown up thinking these things were yams, and I was so adamant, and it became this like point of contention where I started doubting other things that he would say, and I started making him wrong, and I kind of built up this wall. It's like, those are, yeah, and I was wrong, which is so funny. But we all, and that's a humorous, but there are a lot of unhumorous points. Like we all have a different stopping point where we're like, oh, everybody has their own perspective and is entitled to their own until you come to this topic, and then like, it's just unimaginable. We say things like it's morally wrong, or it's factually wrong. Do you follow what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like, how do we, this is why I think play is important, because play is an invitation to say, I'm going to expand my capacity for hearing things that don't make sense to me or that seem wrong at first. And I'm just going to ask some questions instead of putting up the wall.
Yeah. Play. Two things are coming to me. Play is an invitation for openness, of course.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I think play like changes the game completely, and is the fact that we're allowed to be wrong. We're allowed to make mistakes. And what brings up walls so much is exactly the need to be right.
Why? Yeah. Why do you think we have this need to be right?
It goes back to the ego that you mentioned before. Like, the ego wants to be right. You want to control things. Things need to make sense. We're
Yeah.
always trying to make sense of things, and we even played with this in other moments. Like we're talking about making more meaning and less sense, make less sense and more meaning. Um, things have meaning that we give to it, right? So if we attach emotionally to like this truth is part of who I am, and I like it's part of my identity, then it's harder to be challenged in that than if it's something like someone tells me that, I don't know, that uh, the sky is red. I might think, okay, they're just crazy, I'm not attached to it, right?
Right. Right.
But if it I'm gonna give a simple example. When I was younger, when someone would tell me that my eyes were brown, I was like, they're not brown, they're green.
Yes.
They're actually
You're
hazel.
very attached.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's something when it's something
That's how I
that,
felt about yams. For some reason, I had
yeah,
a vendetta against sweet potatoes, and
part
I
of
was like,
your
yams are the only good ones. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It so okay. So if I'm so attached, then it seems like some good triage. Like maybe before I can move into play, I need to explore self-compassion.
Mm,
Cuz cuz sometimes we don't have the energy for play, when we're really feeling overwhelmed, frightened, um desolate. Play doesn't always call us. And maybe it's like I'm kind of imagining, what if we could design a pathway that human beings could move along that would like help help shift us from
mm,
the absolute fear, because that's usually what's under the anger, right? Like the absolute terror of somebody saying my eyes are brown. They're not. Um, into a loosening, like, so that I don't have to be so attached to that.
mm.
And just maybe the first loosening is self-compassion, like, oh, I just had a thought about what the homework could possibly be, or at least
Mm.
a theme for it. Like, what if it's okay to be wrong?
And what if it's okay for people to perceive things differently than, even when it's something that is related to you?
Yeah. So both of those at the same time, maybe. Like, what if I don't have to know for sure and be right about this, and I can be wrong and that's okay? And what if somebody else can, in my opinion, be wrong and that's okay? Like, what if we can be wrong? Anybody gets to be wrong. You were
Yeah.
saying something different.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking because one thing that I got to understand through this was that the more I'm uncertain about something, the more I'm attached to it, and the more certain I am about it, it's okay for other people to think differently, and I'm not feeling challenged by it.
I relate to that. I think this is why I used to be a very angry and adamant atheist.
Mm. We talked about that. That's a. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, like needing to judge people who had a faith or spirituality or a religion, needing to be very loud and obnoxious about how silly um the possibility that there's, something bigger than me. Um because all my life I've felt connected, and I started turning off my that feeling of connection, and disregarding, that, and putting in a box of silly, like, in my teen years. Um, and I do remember the moment when I had the thought, so, because I 'cause I'm here going like, "Obviously, there's no God and there's no anything, and that would be dumb and rah." Like, very vocal and putting so much energy into it, and arguing with people, just having not even like conversations that went in circles forever and ever and ever, and it was just each of us saying, "This is the thing that I hope is true." Or not even hope is true, but this is like, it has to be this way." And I remember the moment I asked myself, "What if I weren't responsible for knowing how it all worked?" And by it, I mean, like,
Mm.
the cosmos. I felt this weight release from
Mm.
my shoulders, and that's when I stepped into not knowing.
Yeah, and being okay with not knowing.
Oh, it was so freeing. I mean, it was one
Yeah.
of the top 10 moments of my life.
Hmm. I love that you're sharing this because I feel like it circles back to my hesitancy sharing at those moments that you mentioned. I remember clearly one of them, and I know that I had hesitance in multiple times, but
Yeah.
there was a time because I had my back and forth with that. I had a time where I was like, I hope God doesn't exist because if he does, he hates me.
Yeah.
And I had the realization of, ah, this is what people call the Holy Spirit. Otherwise, I don't know what else it is. And like that got back to the experience of like, in my experience, I know this is true, and I don't have to impose this to anyone because it's my experience, it's my connection, and I hope everyone has their own. Like I really hope everyone has it, but it's
Yeah.
not me telling that's going to make them have it. And I remember one moment in one of our calls in the Hotline Sisterhood where I had a big insight and written about Jesus' story, and like we've been relating
Yeah.
um, to like my story of Mary Magdalene as well. And I was a little bit hesitant with like quite a lot hesitant in sharing that because I know that we all have multiple different backgrounds in there, and I know that Christianity has a lot of weight.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put that as like this is the truth or this is what we collectively here believe. Like it was like I want to share this and take what serves you because this is my experience, my belief, me coming back to my origins, having learned and studied and gone through all the ups and downs and disbelief and belief and all of it, uh, coming back to what I find of good, and which is, I don't want to even say truth, but it's like I feel love in these words.
That's oh, yeah, okay. I was so grateful. You probably remember my response that you opened my heart in that experience, because, since I love you and since I trust you, I was able to be in a place of going, You know, in The Princess Bride, when Inigo Montoya keeps saying, "You keep on using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." Right? It's like, that's how it was for me, right? So, because I love you and because I trust you, I was like, I'm hearing words, like, from Lais that I'm used to hearing in a particular context, and I have attached meaning to I've attached as soon as I hear the word Jesus, I've attached this meaning, this meaning, this meaning, this meaning, this meaning, this meaning. And, most of them were not friendly. Um, and I went, "Okay, but what if I just set down those attachments for a moment? Like, I don't have to decide anything, but what if I just stay really present to what Lais is sharing?" And you opened up my heart, you opened up my mind. It made me interested in a whole new way in, like, who were those mystics who wrote the Bible? Like, this is actually really cool. They're bringing forward traditions that, um, like, they're bringing forward traditions as opposed to squashing traditions. And, what a like, that thank you. Thank you for doing that and for easing
Hmm.
open my context. And so now you've taken us in this really this is the next nugget, right? It's not simply about somebody coming and saying this thing is true and that thing is not true that riles us. It's just the words themselves.
Yeah.
So, even when you took us through an amazing Mary Magdalene healing at one point in the Hot Light Sisterhood, and I added, like, Mary Magdalene. My attachment to those words is, all this baggage I'm bringing that isn't based on scholarly study. It isn't based on a heartfelt investigation. I mean, this is the definition of prejudice, right? It's like, I've already decided about that thing. You don't need to tell me about it because I've already decided. I don't like sweet potatoes. I love sweet potatoes now.
Have you ever tried it? No, and I hate it.
It's what I was eating the whole time, but I've made peace with the word. But but it's so how do we ease into that openness?
Mm. I feel like it goes back to openness, having to have the honesty. And I'm going to tell you from my perspective how it felt. It felt vulnerable to share that. And if it's not feeling vulnerable, it's probably not going to land. Even if, like, I when we're sharing something that is um, deep within our hearts and that it's a truth for us, it's our experience, um, of course we're risking being attacked. We're risking like exposing that, like, here's my heart, you can do whatever you want with that, right? And it goes back to that insecurity as well. The more insecure we are about that, the more we try to protect. But at that moment, I felt like this is my experience. I don't have to defend it, but I know it's true for me. And I had the openness that you can have your own view of that. I'm just gonna share because it was touching me and it was important for me. So although it was vulnerable, I was willing to share, and I was willing to let you have whatever opinions you had about it.
Oh my gosh. That's overwhelming me with gratitude and with, like, just feel like I'm listening to a beautiful piece of music or standing in front of a beautiful piece of artwork. Is you were open to us thinking whatever we wanted to or needed to. Wow. Um, thank you for naming it in that way, I think you've hit on something so crucial to these conversations about curiosity and allowing one another more grace. Yeah. If with love, I can say, I'm going to share and you can think whatever you want. Okay, I'm putting that on my human being bingo card.
That's landing for me right now as well, because I was even thinking like that doesn't come without fear. Of course I had fear.
Yeah.
I was thinking like, yeah, it might be that they think, okay, now she's going to go like all Christian on us, and like, where's the all the astrology, which we never cut out the astrology and all this stuff, like, because that my view is not like stricted in any way. It's all um pieces of the puzzle, like this big cosmic mystery that is life.
Yeah.
um
And allowing there to be pieces that like resonate with our sense of like what's deeply true about the world that come from many different places.
yeah.
Come from many different places. Ooh, it's 11:11 where I am.
It's so beautiful, because when we were starting here, I remember I told you it's 2:22 at the 22.
Yes, so lovely. And
Yes.
that's a wonderful reason to not have the same time. You get the angel numbers more frequently. Um, so
Hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
share like this. I'm going to share my big insight. Um,
Mm.
my big insight so far in this ongoing conversation is that thing you said, that it's the moment of saying I'm open to people hearing this however they are going to hear it, and also the kind of barometer of if it doesn't feel vulnerable, then it's probably not going to land. Like I'm probably not stepping into a place in myself who's sharing in a way that signals to somebody else, hey, it's safe. Like let's come sit down in the grass together and like chill out, and create this space. Like we can each be the first person to create that space by sharing vulnerably. That's my big insight. What's your big insight from this?
My big insight actually came from hearing you mention that you noticed my hesitancy, and I actually thought of like, so actually when I am feeling that hesitancy, and this might be for everyone, like when we're feeling that hesitancy, it probably means it's important, and it probably means that it's worth sharing.
Oh, nice. Oh, I love it. Well, for those of you watching, we love it if you shared your insights in the comments.
I'm gonna just put one of the comments here. Someone said that, let me see if I can put this, that they just discovered Jacqueline said, I just discovered the channel and I really enjoy the content. That's awesome.
Oh,
Glad to
thank you,
have you here.
Jacqueline. Yeah, happy to have you. And it looks like we got a wave from Andrew.
Yeah, I was wondering if this would show. Andrew is one of the members from our band 2 weeks that recorded the song from the intro. Unfortunately, this doesn't have emojis, but you can see that it's a
I
hand.
actually I find the like closed captioning of emojis and sound effects in movies to be very interesting. I'm fascinated, so I love seeing that. How would we spell it out?
Yeah.
All the details. Okay, so now we've got our insights. What should we incite ourselves?
I
Feed
I
back on?
I know you had already an
I've
idea for
forgotten it.
the you forgot the homework.
Yeah.
So this podcast will always have a homework, an insight, and a call for action for you to do something. So
Actually, I
I
have
have an
I have
idea,
a
but
new
yeah.
one. But do you have one?
I want to hear yours.
Okay,
It might be the
my
same.
homework for me, and anybody else wants to pick this up, it's yours too. I want to notice when I am in that place of hesitancy where I want to share something with somebody and I'm in hesitancy. I don't have to do anything about it yet, but I want to start noticing those moments. That's my homework.
And I can add to that, like when you notice that hesitancy, um, I'm gonna give a journal prompt. Uh, Journaling is something that helps so much to gain clarity, and I do this on a regular. I know that you do as well. Um, right? Why is this feeling either unsafe, insecure, um, fearful to share? And what is that you're uncertain about this thing that makes it so hard to share? Because the more you get like that certainty, or even like just accepting that, okay, it's okay for me to not know everything about this and let go of that attachment, the easier it will be, even if it's your fear, if you fear it, the easier it will be for you to share, even when you have the hesitancy.
Hmm. I like that. Okay, I'm accepting that homework assignment. Notice the hesitancy and then ask, where am I feeling unsafe?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to continue this conversation. I think this will be really amazing.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and yeah, keep tuning in. We're just going to continue this conversation and see what we can figure out about how to be curious, playful, loving, connected humans.
And let us know in the comments if you watch this later as well, what insights you got from this or your experience. Share your experience. Use this space to share your experience. We actually are thinking of having a specific space for the podcast, and you'll be hearing more about that soon. But yeah, share your experience, share your insights, and if you take on the homework, share what came from it as well.
Yeah. And if you don't take on that homework, take on a homework of your own choosing. Because remember, the first rule of Incite Club is you don't talk about Incite Club, you take action on it.
You do it. Yes. All right. Thank
Take
you,
good care.
everyone. Take good care.